हाँ पूछा।
नहीं चल रहा है माँ जी, इसको तो सेम ही दिखा रहा है। लिंक यही है ना जो आपने श्री गीता सत्संग में भेजा हुआ है,
हाँ
इसी को ही क्लिक कर रहा है, नहीं ज्वाइन हो रहा।
तो सचिन मुझे एक और भेजे थे, मैं उससे ज्वाइन किए। सचिन।
तो आप वही श्री गीता सत्संग में भेजिए।
हाँ सचिन।
कैसे माँ जी?
हाँ अ, आपने जो मुझे भेजे हैं वो श्री गीता में डालना। पूजा इज नॉट एबल टू ज्वाइन। ठीक है, अभी डालेंगे पूजा।
कौन से ग्रुप में? सुधा गीता में है माँ जी?
क्या बोले पूजा के बारे में?
कौन सा, सुधा गीता या गीता और विश्व शांति?
नहीं, श्री, SRI, श्री गीता।
नहीं है उस ग्रुप में। हाँ ओके, श्री गीता सत्संग।
हाँ मैंने अभी डाले।
ओके
I,
ओके,
I
आपने
put it
यूट्यूब की
in,
लिंक भेजी है?
I put it in Sri Gita and told Pooja to join. तो कल इसके बारे में थोड़ा बात करके ये सब ठीक करेंगे, और आप सब लोगों का एक सिस्टम रखेंगे ताकि ये सिस्टम ऑटोमेटिक चलेगा। फिर कल बात करूंगी आपसे। जय गुरुदेव।
देखो तो ये माँ जी, ये जूम लिंक नहीं है, ये यूट्यूब लिंक है। जूम लिंक भेजिए जो आपको सचिन ने भेजा।
अरे बाप रे। ठीक है सचिन, आपने भेजा क्या श्री गीता में? ठीक है, मैं फिर भेजूंगी।
हेमा जी आपने भेजा है, मुझे राइट्स नहीं है उसमें भेजने के।
वो बोल रहे हैं वो यूट्यूब का है, वो जूम का नहीं है, ऐसा
हाँ वो
बोल
आपने,
रहे हैं।
मैंने आपको यूट्यूब की जो लिंक भेजी है ना, वो आपने उसमें डाली है। आप वो जूम मीटिंग की भेजिए उनको।
ये मैंने आपने मुझे यूट्यूब का डाले, चेक नाउ बोल के, उसके नीचे जो है वो यूट्यूब का है, जूम का कहाँ है? हाँ
हेमा जी जो दोपहर में भेजा था ना वो मीटिंग कोड है ना?
अभी जूम का भेजे, उससे पहले आपने यूट्यूब का भेजा था।
तो जूम का तो पहले भेज दिया था ना हेमा जी आपको मैंने दोपहर में।
वो नहीं चल रहा ना, उससे होस्ट इज इन अनदर मीटिंग बोल के आ रहा। Nobody is able to join. अभी अच्छा,
हेमा जी उसी मीटिंग से आप कनेक्ट हुए थे?
अभी पूजा आ गए, उनको को-होस्ट बनाना और दूसरे लोग कैसे ज्वाइन होंगे? कोई भी नया है, मे बी पीपल आर हैविंग डिफिकल्टी, आई डोंट नो, बिकॉज नोबडी इज हियर.
हेमा जी, जो अभी आपने लिंक शेयर किया है वो चल रहा है, तो उससे ही सचिन ने भी मुझे वो भेजा था, मैंने ज्वाइन किया है उससे. नाउ 4 people आ रही है.
4 people कौन है? ओनली यू एंड आई एंड सचिन आर देयर.
Oh yes.
People, maybe people are having difficulty. Oh, Hima came. ठीक है. हाँ, पंडित जी आए. चलो सचिन, अभी रामराज टीवी का आरंभ करना और आगे बढ़ेंगे.
जय गुरुदेव हेमा जी, I'm there.
जय गुरुदेव हिमा. There was a little bit of confusion today.
Yes, I'm following up. I'm
Yeah.
there now. I'm there.
We got used to it. We are understanding and we are patient.
Yes, Hema ji.
So, सचिन, आरंभ करें?
जी हेमा जी आरंभ हो चुका है.
जय गुरुदेव. स्वागतम. Welcome to all to our Maharishi Gita Satsang on Jnana Vijnana Yoga chapter.
सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनामधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. जय गुरुदेव.
Jai Gurudev. Today, I will briefly cover the last 2 shlokas of chapter 4, and then we will do the summary of chapter 4. Manish ji, माला करना चौथा अध्याय का 39 और 40 श्लोकों का.
जी दीदी. ॐ श्री परमात्मने नमः. अथ चतुर्थोऽध्यायः. ॐ श्रद्धावान् लभते ज्ञानं तत्परः संयतेन्द्रियः. ज्ञानं लब्ध्वा परां शान्तिम् अचिरेणाधिगच्छति. अज्ञश्चाश्रद्धधानश्च संशयात्मा विनश्यति. नायं लोकोऽस्ति न परो न सुखं संशयात्मनः. ॐ.
So today, I will not be doing the recap of the last shlokas because I will be covering it in the summary of the 4th chapter. So I will briefly cover these 2 shlokas and then we will move on to the summary. So the shloka number 41, Yoga Sanyasta Karmanam Jnana Sanchinna Samshaya. This shloka is telling us what karma sannyasa is and how actions do not bind us. And the meaning of sannyasa is renunciation. Means you're renouncing something, you're leaving something. So what are we leaving here? In our transcendental meditation, when we transcend, we go beyond the three gunas. So you are leaving the gunas. You experience your Atma. You leave the gunas and you are experiencing Atma. So Atma, that is yourself, is separated from the activity of the gunas. So what karma sannyasa here means? You are leaving the gunas. That is sannyasa of the karma. Karma means any action. It can be gross, on the gross level when you put ahuti in the yagya kund, or it can be on a subtle level of mental activity in TM. So when this happens, sometimes this may cause a little bit of confusion for some people because of this feeling of separateness. They may feel a bit aloof from the outside world. Then they begin to wonder, what is this? Why am I feeling this way? So this shloka is giving the answer to such an experience where you are feeling separate and feeling a little bit, different about this. So this shloka removes the doubt and is telling us that feeling of separation is a normal stage in the evolution, and that Atmavan, that is Jivan Mukta, is feeling aloof from the outside world because of separation brought about by transcending. So this understanding is very helpful because without knowledge, even good experience may cause confusion and some fear. You are wondering, what's going on here. So this shloka is telling that when you transcend, you experience yourself as separate from activity, and that is fine. That's how you are able to have the experience of silence of Atma. Because Atma is what? It is beyond the gunas. It is transcendental. Only when you leave the gunas, you can have the full experience of Atma. So when you have this understanding, it helps us to feel that, oh, okay, we are okay. This separation I feel because I'm transcending. Now I experience Atma on one side, but I also see the gunas on the other side. But there is just some separation because that's the way it is when you separate action with Atma. Since knowledge and understanding of the experience, both are very important. It will be very good to be in touch with your local TM center and attend advanced meetings where you can discuss your experiences. If such doubts come, the teacher will be there and they will be able to explain to you. Maharishi said that if somebody is wearing a big diamond in his neck and he doesn't know that it is diamond, then he just feels the weight of diamond. But then somebody tells him, hey, look, oh, your diamond is so beautiful. And then he says, what? Do I have a diamond? Then when he looks at it, he realizes that he has a diamond in his neck. Then his joy is immense. Then he goes, oh, I have a diamond, I have a diamond. So the joy, the understanding, knowing that he has a diamond in his neck, it makes him so happy. So understanding our experience is very important and it makes us happy and it confirms that we are having the good experience, and that is the value of understanding your experience. So the scientific research on this shloka we have covered already, but I will briefly mention. The scientific research had shown that practitioners of TM, they have demonstrated that they have increased inner control, enhanced inner well-being, greater inner calm and tranquility, and increase in self-confidence. So any questions on this? Okay. So now I'll move on to the next shloka, that is shloka number 42. I will okay. Yeah, we did it backwards today. First, I gave the main point, but now we will read. We will do it the right way. I will read the Sanskrit shloka. Then we will read translation. Okay. Tasmadajnana-sambhutam hrutstham jnanasinatmanah. Oh,
41, Himaji.
actually, Pooja, we should do 41.
41, Himaji. No, 40.
Okay. Yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana sanchilna samshayam atmavantam na karmani nibadhnanti dhananjaya. Yoga samstanya karmanam jnana sanchilna samshayam atmavantam na karmani nibadhnanti dhananjaya. He who has renounced action by virtue of yoga O winner of wealth, whose doubts are rent asunder by knowledge, who is possessed of the self, him actions do not bind. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev, he who has renounced action by virtue of yoga, he who in action sees inaction, whose every undertaking is free from desire, having cast off attachment to the fruit of action, expecting nothing, satisfied with whatever comes unasked, freed from attachment, liberated, his action is entirely dissolved. Here yoga means karma yoga, when by the practice of karma yoga, the practice of transcendental meditation supplemented by activity, one begins to live being together with activity. One experiences it as separate from activity, and this experience of separation of oneself from activity is called renunciation. Renunciation is thus gained automatically through the practice of yoga. It may be noted that this state of renunciation is not limited to the mental level of thinking or the intellectual level of understanding. It is on the level of being, on the level of life itself. It is a living reality for the realized man in cosmic consciousness. whose doubts are rent asunder by knowledge. He is wise among men. He is united, whose action is burnt up in the fire of knowledge, ever contented, his heart and mind disciplined, balanced in success and failure, whose mind is established in wisdom, so does the fire of knowledge turn all actions into ashes. Having stated that renunciation is achieved through the practice of Karma Yoga, Shri Krishna Bhagavan here clarifies a very practical point on the path of enlightenment. As the practice of Karma Yoga advances, one begins to feel oneself as separate from activity. This experience brings with it a feeling of confusion. One finds oneself active, yet inwardly one feels somewhat aloof from activity. Doubts begin to arise in the mind, and the intellect seeks for some explanation of the situation. Right understanding about the ultimate reality is provided by the teaching of the preceding 40 verses. When a man attains cosmic consciousness, the knowledge that being is independent and separate from activity confirms that his experience is valid. It is this knowledge that removes all doubt about the nature of reality. Without proper understanding, even the direct experience of eternal freedom may be found to create confusion and fear. The glory of knowledge is extolled here. Possessed of the self, this is said of him who has renounced action by virtue of yoga and whose doubts are rent asunder by knowledge. Someone who experiences himself as uninvolved with activity but has no clear understanding of this experience remains confused by it. In this state, he fails to live being fully, fails to possess the self in its full glory and grace. Possessed of the self indicates fixity in the self for all time, the state of cosmic consciousness. Of such a man, Shri Krishna Bhagavan says, him actions do not bind because he is no more involved with actions. He ceases to identify himself with his activity. He has identified himself with eternal being. He is possessed of the self. Various implications of the expression possessed of the self have been explained in the previous verses of this chapter. He has accomplished all action. Verse 18, him the knowers of reality call wise. 19 verse, depending on nothing. Verse 20, performing action by the body alone. 21, balanced in success and failure. 22, who acts for the sake of Yagya. Verse 23. Jai Gurudev.
Okay. So we did things a little bit backward today, but that's okay. I hope everybody got the points. Any questions about karma sannyasa, renunciation of action? Please go ahead and ask now. If there are no questions, I'll move on to the next one. I'll be covering this point again in the summary, so we still have a chance for more discussion on this. So moving on to verse 42, Manish ji, 42 verse का पारायण करना.
जी दीदी। ओ तस्माद् ज्ञान संभूतम् हृस्थं ज्ञानासिनात्मनः चित्वैनं संशयं योगम् आतिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ भारत। ओम।
Jai Gurudev. Therefore, having cut asunder with the sword of knowledge this doubt of yours, born of ignorance and rooted in the heart, resort to yoga. Stand up, O Bharata. The state of union is full even in transcendental consciousness, but it is not considered to be the mature state of union unless transcendental consciousness has become permanent in the state of cosmic consciousness. Thus, we find that the union gained in the state of transcendental consciousness reaches maturity in cosmic consciousness, which in turn finds fulfillment in God consciousness. Yoga here again means karma yoga, which requires a man to gain transcendental consciousness and engage in activity. When samadhi, the state of yoga, begins to be experienced, nothing more need be done for full enlightenment. For cosmic consciousness or Jivan Mukti, except regular practice of samadhi, alternating with normal activity in practical life. For this reason, Sri Krishna Bhagavan urges Arjuna to resort to yoga to gain transcendental consciousness and be engaged in action. This, he says, will free Arjuna from all doubts. Sri Krishna Bhagavan brings home to him that all misery is due to ignorance of state of separation of being from activity. Sword of knowledge, as the sharp edge of sword, is capable of cutting whatever it needs. So, the state of knowledge, the awareness of being as separate from activity, cuts asunder all doubts about the true nature of life and activity. Until this knowledge dawns, doubts are certain to remain. All doubts are due to ignorance of this reality, says Sri Krishna Bhagavan. Born of ignorance and rooted in the heart, the doubt born of ignorance should belong to the mind, but Sri Krishna Bhagavan says, rooted in the heart. The heart is concerned with the experience and the mind with understanding. When Sri Krishna Bhagavan speaks of doubt as rooted in the heart, he means that even though the doubts is in the mind, it has its roots in the heart, which is devoid of the experience of being and of the experience of being as separate from activity. The teaching is that it is necessary to experience being and to understand clearly the separateness of being from activity. Thus, enlightened, one should perform one's duty. It should be stressed that the state of renunciation is not exclusive to either Karma Yoga or Sankhya. It is state that develops on both these paths, whether one is following Karma Yoga, the practice of transcendental meditation, supplemented by physical activity, or the path of Sankhya, the practice of transcendental meditation, supplemented by the mental activity of contemplation. One is sure to arrive at the experience of the state of renunciation. Here is the essence of the teaching of this chapter, Remove all doubts about reality by means of the knowledge of Sankhya and engage yourself in the practice of Karma Yoga. Thus, in the Upanishad of the glorious Bhagavad Geeta, in the science of the Absolute, in the scripture of Yoga, in the dialogue between Sri Krishna Bhagwan and Arjuna, ends the fourth chapter entitled The Yoga of Knowledge of Renunciation of Action. Jai Gurudev.
So there are two main points in this shloka. One is that doubt is born of ignorance and it is rooted in the heart. And the second main point is cut it asunder with the sword of knife. And then Sri Krishna Bhagavan is telling Arjuna to resort to yoga. Here, knowledge is compared to a knife. Just like a sharp knife can cut anything, knowledge cuts off all doubts about the true nature of life, that Atma is separate from activity. Here, it is said that doubt is born of ignorance, and that ignorance is rooted in the heart. Actually, if we have a doubt, it's in the mind, because mind is thinking. But here it says that the doubt is rooted in the heart. Why is that? Because heart is concerned with experience and mind is concerned with understanding. So even though the doubt is in the mind, it has its roots in the heart, because in the heart there is no experience. And because of that, heart is becoming the root of the doubt. And so the advice is to root out the doubt from the heart with the knife of knowledge. So the knife of knowledge is what, we have studied, we have been getting that knowledge. So once you have that knowledge, that experience of knowledge goes into the heart, and because of this, the ignorance is rooted out. So moving on to the scientific research. Scientific research had shown that there was decreased suspicion in prisoners and increase in self-confidence and self-esteem. The study also showed that there was decrease in anxiety, resentment, aggression, depression, and negativity. So this ends the chapter 4. Now we will move on to the summary. But before that, I want to ask if there are any questions. We can take questions now, and then we will begin summary. Anyone has questions or main points or appealing points? Go ahead, please. Okay.
Emmaji, 1 minute.
Yeah.
If you could be more specific about how it works between the heart and the mind.
So, you see, mind is concerned with thinking. It's always thinking, and questions come up, doubts come up, opinions come up, and all that. So when there is a question, it's coming from your mind. But here it is saying that the doubt is rooted in the heart. Heart has to do with feeling, experience, love, emotion. And so when that feeling, that experience of wholeness is not there in the heart, it is vacant, it is there is nothing there. That experience is lacking in the heart. So, though doubt is in the mind, the basis of that is in the heart. Because in the heart, there is nothing there. The experience of wholeness is not there in the heart. So, in order to deal with that lack of wholeness in the heart, what we do? We transcend, we have the experience, and then heart is satisfied when you have the experience of wholeness. And then the root cause of that ignorance is removed, because now the heart is full. And also you will find that mind is also satisfied. So this takes us to the beginning of our Gita discussion, where the basic problem of Arjuna was that there was no harmony between mind and heart. Mind was fully developed. It is saying, I know what to do. And heart is fully developed. It is saying, I know, I love my relatives. I can't kill them. So there was no harmony. Mind is saying, I know, my duty is to fight and kill them. But heart is saying, no, you can't kill the enemy, your own relatives. So now that harmony is bridged. Now mind is saying, I know. And then heart is saying, yeah, my heart is full. So there is harmony between the two. So this solves the basic problem of lack of harmony between mind and heart.
Right.
Did I answer your question, Anita ji?
Yeah. Very well.
Okay, very good. Any other questions, or shall we move on? Okay. So we will begin with the summary of the fourth chapter. So I would like to say a little bit about the title of this chapter, and then continue with summary. The title of the chapter is Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. It tells us that yoga, that is union, is gained through the knowledge of renunciation. So there are three words here. One is jnana, one is karma, and sannyasa, and yoga, actually four. So we just talked about what renunciation means. So in this title, karma sannyasa, you see the word karma sannyasa is part of the title. So we just talked about it. Sannyasa, renunciation means that you are leaving something, you are giving up something. Tyaga in Sanskrit. So here when you say karma sannyasa, it means that you are leaving karma. And what is this chapter teaching us? It is giving us the knowledge of karma sannyasa. Means it's giving us the knowledge of renunciation, of leaving something, and that something is karma. You're leaving karma. So we know from our TM experience that when we transcend, we go beyond thought. That means there is no thought, no mantra, no thought. It's just silence. There is nothing there, nothing of any activity. So you don't have the activity of the gunas anymore. That means you left it, right? It's gone. You have left the gunas, activity of gunas, and then you are experiencing Atma. So then what happens? Your Atma is separate, the gunas are separate, because you left them. They're not there anymore in your experience of Atma. So this activity is separated. That's what you left. So a natural state of renunciation is the true basis of life. That is a reality of life, that Atma and activity of gunas is separate. That is the main point. So this is very important to understand and remember that the true basis of life is separation, renunciation of gunas from the silence of Atma. So then what happens? As a result of this experience, you get freedom from bondage. And so this is the second very important point to understand. So let's dwell on this a little bit. Freedom from bondage. We won't understand this very well. So when we perform actions, they create an impression on our mind. This becomes the seed for future actions and desires and more impression. So as long as this continues, you're caught up in the vicious cycle of action, impression, desire, and action. And this cycle is broken with transcending. So when you transcend, the actions are not producing any impression on Atma because the actions are separate from the Atma. You see, that break is there because that separation is there. So this cycle is broken with transcending. And why is this important? Because this breakup, this separation, is essential requirement for enlightenment. Unless you break this cycle, there is no moksha. Because if the cycle is not broken, actions keep on producing impressions on your mind. And this cycle continues. So you are caught up in that. You are bound. But by breaking this cycle, by transcending, by having the experience of separation of Atma from activity, then there are no impressions. Because Atma is transcendental, there cannot be any impressions in Atma. So this separation is the essential requirement for enlightenment. And this happens gradually over a period of time. As we talked in one of the previous sessions, in the beginning stages or before meditation, when you are performing action, they produce an impression, and it is like an impression on the stone. The impressions are very deep and they are imprinted there. As you are meditating, these impressions become less and less deep. Then they will become like you have put a line in the sand. When you put the line on the sand, it will become more easy to erase it. So the impressions will become less deep. They're not as deep as putting it on the stone. And as you are meditating, continuing your program, and you're evolving in higher states of consciousness, then what happens? The impressions become even less deep. They become more superficial, means more easy to get rid of them. It will be like drawing a line in water. As you draw the line, the line gets erased because it's not so deep as on a stone. And then as you progress, what happens when you draw a line in the air? There is no impression at all. You're drawing a line, but there is no impression. So that happens when you're established in Atma, Atmavan, Jivan Mukta. He experiences this self as separate from activity, and yet he is able to perform all action. So the separation is there, and still you're enjoying life, you're performing actions, but they're not producing impression. Just like you're acting, but there is no impression. You're drawing a line in the air, but it's not causing any impression. So that is the great advantage of going deeper and deeper into the silence of Atma. And then you are not producing any impression, so you are free. You are not caught up in the boundaries. That is why it is called as freedom from the binding influence of action. So those 2 points we covered, karma sannyasa and how renouncing action is helping us to get relief from the binding influence of action. So those 2 points we covered. So the third point in the title is Jnana. Jnana had been touched upon in earlier chapters also to some extent, where in chapter 2, verse 48, we studied Yogastha Kuru Karmani. This phrase, Yogastha Kuru Karmani, it has the seed thought for chapter 3 and 4. The seed thought for chapter 3 is established in action, you perform, established in yoga, you perform action. Yoga stha, that is established in yoga. That is silence, that is union. Then Kuru Karmani, do action. That is the third chapter. That is the seed thought for the Karma Yoga. And then in this second line, established in Yogastha Kuru Karmani, Sangam Tyaktva Dhananjaya, having abandoned attachment. So in the fourth chapter, we are saying you go beyond the gunas and you experience self as separate, then there is no attachment to anything because you are separate. So this phrase, Sangam Tyaktva, is the seed thought for chapter 4. So, second chapter, third chapter, fourth chapter, we have studied all these concepts in these 3 previous chapters already. So, second chapter gave us knowledge of life in its relative and absolute aspects. Third chapter gave us knowledge about how to make the experience of Atma, that was mentioned in 45th verse, Nistray Gunyo Bhava, be without the 3 gunas. So we covered those 2 points. And then when this experience of silence is maintained in waking, dreaming, and sleep states of consciousness, then we have cosmic consciousness. And again, you experience Atma as separate from the activity. And when you feel separated, and if there is any confusion, we just discussed how this doubt is cleared when we understand that this is one of the temporary phases the Jivan Mukta goes through, and understands that this is the basis of the next experience that's going to come up, that experience of unity that's going to come up when one begins to grow in consciousness. So this question of why is there separation between self and activity, this question is answered in chapter 4. It is giving us the knowledge of renunciation by analyzing the nature of action and the nature of actor, both on the level of individual as well as on the cosmic level, on the level of man and on the level of God. So action and actor are separate, is what chapter 4 is, explaining to us. And as a result of this analysis, we find that action and actor are independent of one another, but this is only a temporary state. As we go on, we find that these two are not really separate always. These two fullnesses in cosmic consciousness, they find consummation in grand unity of God consciousness. Because as we grow in consciousness, the gap between the two is resolved. It explains the meaning of Purnamada and Purnamidam, that unmanifest, never-changing, transcendental being is full. The absolute is full. And then you realize that manifested, ever-changing relative is also full. And we begin to see divinity in multiplicity. The divinity of Atma, we begin to see in the multiplicity of the relative. And we live the 200% of life. And this we learned in the third day of checking. So, this point is important to understand, that there is separation of self from activity. We experience that, and then in cosmic consciousness also, that feeling may remain to some extent. But then when we understand that as we grow in consciousness, our perception improves and our appreciation for the relative improves, for the appreciation for the creation improves, that is in the relative. And then you begin to admire the beauty in the relative, so much that the creator comes forward to say, oh, who is this? My admirer. I want to meet him. And then the grand union takes place. So this separation of self from activity is a temporary phase that is the basis for unity of the higher states of consciousness. So that point had been explained in chapter 4, and this is the most fascinating thing about this chapter. In bringing out the knowledge of renunciation of action, it explains the whole field of action. How action is taking us from waking state to cosmic consciousness, from cosmic consciousness to God consciousness, and to unity consciousness. So action is important. And so that's what is dealt with in this chapter. So we learn about the role of action and how having this knowledge of renunciation of action is going to help us to reach our final goal of unity consciousness. So this is about the title. And now I'll begin the summary. This chapter, so I would like to stop here for a second and see if there are any questions, because the title itself is full of very deep meaning. Any questions? This concept of renunciation is important to understand. Okay, so this chapter begins with telling us about the long tradition that gave us the knowledge of how to be successful in life, and says that this tradition is eternal. Even though purity is lost and it is forgotten sometimes, it is revived by God from time to time. And why this loss of knowledge had taken place, Maharishi had explained very beautifully in a tape called Loss and Revival of Knowledge. This tape was made in August of 1972 in Humboldt, California. Maharishi said, quote, Vedanta lays out unity, but the basis of unity is duality. In cosmic consciousness, there is the experience of self and non-self. One lives duality, that is Atma, which is infinite being on one side. And then the relative changing world is there, and they both are separated. And Jivan Mukta is the witness of all change that is going on. This is the basis of rising to higher states of consciousness, that is, God consciousness and unity consciousness. So Jivan Mukta is involved and yet he is not involved. He is in bliss consciousness and he floats in the waves of both absolute and the relative. For such a person, there is no rebirth once you reach this state. But Maharishi said that it is not perfect enlightenment. It is something on the middle. But it is the basis of the ultimate perfect realization in unity. So, first you go through the state of separation of self from activity. This is a state of non-attachment. And when they reached this state, some people misunderstood because of that feeling of non-attachment, that feeling of feeling aloof from the world around you. And they begin to wonder what is going on. So they thought that they should give up material life, and so they started moving away from the joys of life, because the books, whatever they knew, they were saying that self is experienced as separate from activity. And so they thought that one should try to be detached, to experience this self as separate from activity. And so they thought they should give up the material life. So they were moving away from the joys of life. And that was not right. And this did not give result, because when you're trying to think on the level of thinking that you shouldn't be, attached to anything outside the world, then you do not have the inner joy, the fulfillment of non-attachment, because non-attachment is a state of bliss consciousness and it is a state of fulfillment. That joy was not there. They were just thinking on the surface level that, I should not enjoy life, that activity should be separate from me. And so because of that, they did not have bliss consciousness. And so they were not happy. And they did not have the experience of transcendental meditation, not experience of Atma. And with this lack of understanding, it caused many problems. The purity of teaching was lost, and knowledge did not produce the results of enlightenment. So the knowledge was lost. That was the reason. And so from time to time, great teachers like Gurudev came and revived, the whole knowledge. So that's very fortunate for us. Then, moving on, Sri Krishna Bhagavan gave us the knowledge that his birth and actions are divine, divya. Sri Krishna Bhagavan, ever remaining in his cosmic state of transcendental being, takes a body and comes on earth as incarnation from time to time. And because he acts while remaining in his divine nature, his actions are also divine. So, to understand the divine birth and activity, man has to rise to the state of divinity. And this happens when we transcend in meditation and get established in transcendence. And he who knows this in very essence, on leaving the body, is not reborn. He goes to Paramatma. Then we learn that though Bhagavan is same to all people, his reaction to man depends on man's action towards him. So, to understand this better, let's take an example of somebody going to the Ganga Ji to bring some water from Ganga. When people go to, Ganga, they would like to get some Ganga Jal. So, If somebody takes 1 liter bottle, they get 1 liter bottle of Ganga Jal. But if somebody takes 5 liters of, if somebody takes a 5 liter bottle, then you get 5 liters of Ganga Jal. Ganga is not going to say, I'm only going to give you 1 liter or 5 liter. Ganga is the same for everybody. But it depends upon what you do. So it's like that. Bhagwan is same to everybody. But if you want to draw more from Bhagwan, then it's up to us. So that's what is meant when it says that, Bhagwan is same to everybody, but his reaction depends on the man's action towards him. Then we move on. We learn that Sri Krishna Bhagwan had created the fourfold category. Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam guna karma vibhagashaha. What we now call as caste system. Some people don't like this and they question and disagree with the Varna system. But it is in our Shastras. Chapter 16 of Bhagwat Geeta says, Shastram pramanam te, means Shastra should be the pramanam. Shastra should be the authority. Why? Because then it helps us gain param gatim, the liberation and enlightenment. Shastra gives us the knowledge of liberation and enlightenment. Purusha Sukta in Rig Veda says that Brahmanas are Purusha's mouth, Kshatriyas his arms, Vaishyas his thighs, and Shudras his feet. Brahmano Mukhamasit Bahu Rajanya Kritaha. And the Varna system is also mentioned in Lalita Sahasranama. And one of the names of Sri Lalita Devi is Varnashrama Vidhayini. So this knowledge is coming from Shastras, and we take Shastras to be the authority because that helps us to grow to Param Shanti and enlightenment. But some may still have difficulty to accept the caste system just because it is coming from God. So let's see how we can understand it better. There is a logic behind it. The logic behind the Varna system. And the logic is this. The entire creation is the interplay of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. And as a result of the interplay of the three gunas, 4 categories have been created. And this is based on the qualities and function of which gunas predominate. So we will refresh our memory about the qualities of the 3 gunas. Sattva, the qualities of sattva are tranquility, balance, peace, harmony, austerity, purity, patience, integrity, knowledge, wisdom, positivity, virtue, and goodness. Where Satoguna is dominant and Rajas is secondary, they fall into the category of learned people, knowledgeable people. And their function is to give knowledge. They are Brahmins. Now, let us look at the qualities of Rajas. Rajas is passion, activity, self-centeredness, egoism, drivenness, movement, and dynamism. When Rajas dominates and Sattva is secondary, they fall into the category of Kshatriya. They are warriors, and their duty is to maintain law and order, because these qualities of Sattva support that. So, valor, strength, fortitude, skill in weaponry, resolve never to retreat from battle, and leadership abilities. These are the natural qualities of work for Kshatriyas. Now, moving on to Tamas. The qualities of Tamas are imbalance, disorder, chaos, anxiety, impurity, destruction, delusion, negativity, dullness or inactivity, inertia, lethargy, violence, and ignorance. So, when Rajas dominates and Tamas is secondary, they fall into the category of Vaishya, and they are in charge of commerce, finance, economy, agriculture, dairy farming, etc. And these are the natural works for those with the qualities of Vaishya. When Tamas dominates and Rajas is secondary, they fall into the category of Shudra. Serving through work is the natural duty for those with the qualities of Shudra. So, now that we have reviewed all the qualities and functions of the three gunas, let us discuss some more about it. The gunas are not static. Their balance changes all the time. With Maharishi technologies for higher states of consciousness, we can increase sattva, especially with TM. And then Shudra becomes Brahmin. Because just now we have seen that Brahmin means more sattva. With TM, you increase your sattva and then you become a Brahmin. And there are examples in scriptures. We have seen how a hunter evolved into an enlightened sage, Valmiki, just by getting initiation into Rama mantra by Brahmarshi Narada. And then he wrote Ramayana. So, first sage Valmiki, he was a hunter. And he was committing, crimes and, robbing people and all that. And then at one point, he comes across Narada, and Narada gives him Upadesha. But the hunter, he could not pronounce it because he did not have any sattva in him, and his tongue was thick from eating meats, non-vegetarian food and tamasic food that they usually eat. So he says whatever Narada told him, he couldn't recite it. So Narada Maharshi says, Brahmarshi, he says instead of Rama, he says, say Mara. And he continues to say Mara, 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 and then it became Rama. And then with his tapas, he increased sattva, and then he was enlightened. So, nobody need to worry about having any increase in proportion of any of the sattvas. We can change them. There is another example in Manusmriti and in Padma Purana. There is a shloka that says, Janmana jayate shudraha samskarat dvija uchyate. It means a man is Shudra at his birth. He becomes Brahmana due to Upanayana Samskara and doing Vedadhyayana, Nitya Anushtana, Dinacharya, including Devatarchana, Agnihotram, meditation, Japam, etc. With this, he gets established in self with Atmajnana. He follows his dharma and becomes well versed in Vedic knowledge. He's balanced with steady intellect. He's compassionate. He has a pure heart. He always wants to help others. And he's humble. So, even though at birth he was a Shudra, having Shudra qualities, with actions, with changes in his gunas, he becomes Brahmana by increasing the level of sattva. So, just being born in a Brahmana family does not make one a Brahmin. And if they did not get initiated into Gayatri with Upanayanam and follow all the recommendations, then he remains with the Shudra qualities. So, if a Shudra takes on the role of Brahmin without meeting the eligibility criteria and without having the ability to teach the Vedas, it's not right, because then it will not produce the desired result, because sattva is just not there. He's not capable of doing it because he does not have the purity that is required to perform his responsibility. Maharishi said, you extract gold from gold mine and silver from the silver mine. So, if one thinks that he's superior to others just because he's born in a Brahmin family, it's not right thinking, because how can one be called as a doctor when one doesn't have the credentials and doesn't know doctory? Privilege comes with the responsibility of giving Vedic knowledge to the society. So, what is the solution to this situation? The solution is raising individual and collective consciousness. So, we need to keep on teaching TM to masses. Then there will be harmony in the society. So that ends the section on Varnashram. Then we move on. We learned about signs of action. This section tells us that it's not possible to know what right action is or wrong action is and what non-action is by intellectual analysis, because the course of action is unfathomable. Gahana karmano gatihi. It is possible only with the knowledge of divine nature. This is science of action. We get this knowledge in transcendental meditation when we transcend and when we experience divine consciousness, Atma. And because Atma is the home of all the laws of nature, one engages in spontaneous right action. So, even though you don't know how it works, we enjoy the end result of it. It is like, when you water the root, you enjoy the fruit and all different aspects of the tree. Even if you don't understand how the sap travels from the root to the whole tree and all that, it doesn't matter if you don't know the mechanics of how the sap travels from the root to the whole tree. You just water the root and enjoy the fruit and the whole tree. It's like that. So when you transcend, you have the knowledge, and then you begin to perform all right action. So we are safe. We are performing from that level of knowledge where you cannot make any mistake, because it is the home of all the laws of nature. Even if we don't understand how the whole thing works, it's okay. We enjoy the benefit of having that knowledge. So the value of this knowledge is that it takes us to the life of a Jivan Mukta. What is Jivan Mukta? We have already studied, but we will review it now. Jivan Mukta is fully content because he has no desire and he has no attachment to action or fruit of action. He has no desire because he's content. He has everything. The desire comes when you don't have something. But because he's content, there is no desire, just happy with whatever he gets. And he's self-sufficient. He doesn't depend on anything for his happiness. And he doesn't expect anything from anybody. Why? Because he has everything. Why would he want anything from other people? That's when you set yourself up. You expect something from somebody and you don't get it and you're unhappy. But in Jivan Mukta case, you don't expect. You're just relaxed and happy. Because you have everything, you don't expect anything from anybody. And he's disciplined in controlling the senses. He's Jitendriya and Nirashi and Yata Chittatma. All the sense objects, sense perceptions, they're all under his control. He's not under their control. That's because he's disciplined and he has control of the senses, and the senses don't control him. He's satisfied with whatever comes unasked. Yadricha labha santushto. If he gets something, he's happy. If he doesn't get something, fine, no problem. Because he is just fulfilled. And he is beyond the pairs of opposites, dvandvatita. And free from envy, vimatsaraha. Because he has everything, why would he envy other people? And he is outwardly engaged in action, but inwardly he is established in silence. That's a very beautiful state to be in. Once Jivan Mukta reaches this state, every action is for the sake of Yagya. His every action is in response to the need of the time. It helps cosmic evolution and contributes to world peace. So, when we are talking about Yagya, there is this whole section in chapter 4, which talks about Yagya from 24th to on for the next 10 shlokas. And in this section, the shloka of 24th, Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi, this is the most important one of all the Yagyas. And a Jivan Mukta is intent on Brahman. So what this shloka is telling us, the Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi, this shloka, the 24th shloka, it says that Jivan Mukta is intent on Brahman. No matter what he's doing, he is established in bliss consciousness. And he's untouched by the activity of the gunas. So it is the state of consciousness that is important here. Then in the subsequent shlokas, all different types of yajnas are described, and the result of the yajna is bliss consciousness. We experience it daily after our meditation, after transcending. And this Amrita, it's called Amrit, it is bliss. It remains and stays with us in our physiology after the yajna is over. And what is the yajna we are doing? It is the yajna of transcendental meditation. And those who enjoy this Amrit, that bliss, that is nectar, that is called as, Amrit, Yajna Shishta Amritam. So one who enjoys this Amrit, this nectar, they reach eternal Brahmichetana. Yanti Brahma Sanatanam. Brahman, that is eternal. So one who has the experience of this bliss consciousness that is left over after the yajna reaches Brahmi Chetana. So that is why it is important for us to rest after a meditation, so that we are allowing this nectar to sink deep into our system. And then moving on, we learn in chapter 4 that all yajnas are action. Yajna Kunda, or on the subtle level, STM, as we just discussed. This is important to understand, because this is one side of life, that is action, that is in the relative. And all action is in the relative. So all yajnas are in the relative. But our goal is to transcend activity, transcend relativity, and reach the silence of Atma. So in Atma, there is no activity. So all actions, without exception. Now we should remember that all, that word all is important. All action, without exception, they end up in knowledge. They culminate in knowledge. So there is action and there is silence. So action leads to the silence of Atma. Action leads to knowledge. That is why understanding these 2 points is important. One is that yajna, that is action, is in the relative, and that these actions play a very important role. The action has to take you to the absolute of silence. That's a separate thing. So these 2 points are important to understand. Action is in the relative, but action becomes a mean to experience the absolute. Only then life is full. And now we reach the last point of the last part of the chapter, that is about knowledge. Several questions come up. How do we get it? What is the value? What exactly is it? Who will get the knowledge? So the first question is, how do we get the knowledge? The answer is by serving the Guru. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. So there are 3 requirements to gain knowledge. One is to surrender to Guru, then repeated inquiry, and then service to Guru. Then with that, we get knowledge. When we get knowledge, we are not deluded anymore. There is no delusion, there is no moha. But what is moha? Moha means not having the knowledge of what Atma is and what Anatma is. And then you begin to rise in higher states of consciousness. So once that moha is gone, you are rising in higher states of consciousness. And then you are becoming more and more into bhakti, your ordinary bhakti becomes supreme parabhakti. And as a result of this, you see all beings in oneself and also in Paramatma. So this may be a little bit difficult to understand initially, but the example Maharishi gave makes it easy to understand. It's like you wear green glasses and then you see everything green. And how do we get green glasses? By doing meditation morning and evening. PM, AM, PM. This is our favorite slogan. So this brings us to the point, what exactly Jnana is. So the answer to this is in the 38th verse of 4th chapter. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitramiha vidyate. Tat swayam yoga samsiddha kalenatman vindati. This is the most important shloka of this chapter. There are two aspects of knowledge. One is superficial level, that is on the level of understanding. But the real nature of knowledge is the state of knowingness. So we are talking about the real knowledge. So real knowledge is the state of knowingness, of pure consciousness. So when we transcend, we are experiencing perfect silence of Atma, also called as transcendental consciousness. And so this transcendental consciousness is the absolute state of knowledge, means state of knowingness. You know it by experiencing it and not just by understanding it. For example, someone can tell how sweet the mango is, how juicy it is, how delicious and all. But you don't get the taste of it unless you eat it. So knowledge from understanding is like hearing about the taste of mango. And knowledge from experience is like eating the mango and getting the taste of it. You actually experience it. And this brings life to perfect purity. Why? Because by experiencing pure consciousness, you become pure. It is as simple as that. And as we grow in consciousness and get established in cosmic consciousness, we gradually grow in devotion. Your perception becomes very, very refined, and you begin to appreciate and experience the finest relative, the celestial level of existence. Then your admiration for creation is so great that the Creator says, "Who is that great admirer of mine? Let me go and meet him." So the Creator comes down to meet you, and your joy knows no bounds. It is bliss beyond description, and you unite with the Creator, God. Union with God is what we accomplish. That is unity. And this may take some time to grow from cosmic consciousness to God consciousness and to unity. And that's why in this shloka it says, Kalena Atmani Vindati. In time, this unfolds by itself. And another point to remember is that, if you heard me carefully, I said, the Creator, God, comes down to meet you. You're not going anywhere. So that is the glory of this knowledge that we gain by serving the Guru. So I'll stop here. No time for group meditation or TM. We'll just take a couple of minutes for any questions. So shall we close now? Manishji, Shanti part, and then we'll close, please.
दीदी हरे ओम माद्यो शान्तिरन्तरिक्षगुं शान्तिः पृथिवी शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिः वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्विश्वे देवाः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिः सर्वगुं शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः क्षमा शान्तिरेधि यतो यतः समीहसि ततो नो अभयं कुरु सन्नः कुरु प्रजाभ्यो भयं नः पाशव्यः गणानान्त्वा गणपतिगुं हवामहे प्रियाणान्त्वा प्रियपतिगुं हवामहे निधीनान्त्वा निधिपतिगुं हवामहे वशो मम आहमजानि गर्भधाम वमजाति गर्भधाम हरिः ॐ ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। जय गुरुदेव, जय महर्षि।
Jai Gurudev. Thank you all for joining. All can come on cameras now. Thank you, Panditji. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Hima. Thank you, Pooja, for in sharing. Thank you to Happy Girl. Sorry about the little little funny things happening today, but we got some knowledge. We'll meet again next Friday, same time. Jai Gurudev.
जय गुरुदेव।
Yeah, brilliant. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Happy Girl. Happy to see you. Happy to hear your voice. We never get to see you. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev, Himaji.
Jai Gurudev, Anita ji. You didn't say anything today. How was the session?
Oh, it was so nice. I was quite engrossed in listening because, you know, the way you do the summary, then the whole thing gets established in mind. And, you know, the things become much clearer. And of course, you know, in the early, because this is the second time or the third time I'm going through this chapter. But every time you do the summary, something new is there for us to understand.
Yeah, I also noticed that, you know, we did the summary in our Geetamritam group, and this time
Yeah.
when I was preparing, I found so many
Yeah.
new points, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering. I said, I've already done this chapter and I don't know still anything. So,
Yeah.
so things become much more clearer and more comprehensive. And then you know, slowly and steadily start feeling, oh, you're doing Gita session good because you're understanding something now much more than in the first time that we did, you know,
Yeah.
that way. It's very nice. Thank you. Very nice. Jai Gurudev Himaji.
Okay. Thank you, Anita ji. I'm the one enjoying the most preparing
I
and
know.
sharing the knowledge with you. It's a real joy.
So we are so lucky we are having the ready-made khichdi. You are making so you are making the khichdi. Please go on collecting the dals and rice and masalas and everything. And there we are enjoying the khichdi. We do nothing. Just take the bliss out of that khichdi. Isn't that true?
Yes, Anita.
Well, you all contribute, you know, we all are working together on it. And that's it. The joy comes from the togetherness. If I'm just reading at home, it would be different.
Yeah, that's there. That's there. Thank you. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.